Rover's core area's been shrinking since he's been 4.5.
Yeah.
And now that he's 7.5, it's going to be a small area.
Right. And we are right now sitting in the center of his area. Like, this is the epicenter.
And I'm going to kill him on the big tine clover right over there.
That's bold, but I like it.
There he is. So close. Look at that mass. Can you believe that? What an awesome buck. 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to buy this farm, which now we call a cabin farm, and it joins the original piece that I purchased. We closed in January. I had a chance to run some cameras. I actually had a chance to hunt this farm. And the number one deer that popped up on camera was a deer we called the double mane beanbuck. We had a few pictures of him south of here, but this was his core territory. 4 or 5 year old deer in the 170s. He is what I thought was going to be our future 200. But what I didn't know at the time was there were another deer coming through the ranks. He was only 2.5 years old at the time, and his name is Rover, and he's going to be the number one deer on our target list for this year. At 2.5 and 3.5 years old, Rover's core territory was definitely the cabin farm. Your typical young buck, right? Their area is very small. They're not dominant. At 3, Rover was a spindly horned, wide 10-point, big brow tines. We paid attention to him, but we weren't really pursuing or tracking him. Then at age 4, he blew up. He added 40 inches, splits, inline, wide, mass, and he started popping up on every camera on our farm across 2 miles of landscape. And that's when he earned his name, Rover. Despite being on all these cameras, I've still had yet to lay eyes on him until late season. I was actually pursuing another deer, older buck called Apollo. And when Rover came out, despite being a booner, I had to pass him. He just was not old enough yet, despite carrying a 170-inch rack. I continued to hunt Apollo, and I was fortunate enough to put a tag on Apollo, my biggest 8-point to date. When Rover was 5.5 years old, his core area started to shrink, and he had to battle it out almost daily with a buck that we called Nosy, who was a 6.5-year-old brute of a deer. And both of these deer lived in this core area, and I was hunting Nosy at the time. I mean, he was a high 70s deer, but it wasn't until December 6th that I actually saw Rover for the first time on the hoof. But interesting enough, it wasn't until after I arrowed Nosy. I was sitting on this plot, which is cut corn, foundation clover, and main event out here, all big tine blends. Nosy comes out, and 10 minutes after I arrowed him, out comes Rover in all of his glory. It's almost like he knew the dominant buck now is out of the area and he could claim this area. And then we are lucky enough the following spring to pick up a shed, the first antler that we have actually picked up on Rover. He was a big, heavy 10-point at the time with a split brow tine. At 6.5 years old, Rover exploded. His splits came back, his inline came back, his mass was absolutely incredible. He was a number one buck on our hit list for the year. And this, where I'm sitting here right now, was a core of his territory. We spent countless days pursuing him, but in the middle of the rut, he went missing for 11 days. One of our fringe deer we called the wide 10 slid into his pocket. In fact, he was chasing does out in this field, and when a doe came through this foundation clover right here, I arrowed the wide 10 at 32 yards. Once he was off the table, Rover slid back in the pocket, and again the chase continued until the day before gun season when he followed a doe past my grizzly blind. I had to pass him at 42 yards because we were at a shooting light. Talk about stressful. I had to pass Rover at 42 yards, and the next day was gun season, and I didn't have a tag for this county. Despite all my stresses for gun season, Rover ran the gauntlet and made it through. At that point, I decided he gets a pass until the next year. Despite giving him this pass, I continued to hunt in the area for does and to learn as much as I could about Rover. And wouldn't you believe I had the best encounter ever when he came out of the big tine clover, came all the way down the field, past the grizzly blind, and bedded on a ridge behind me. It was that same ridge in the spring that I found his matched set of antlers and really confirmed to me what an incredible whitetail this is. Historically, this is one of the best cameras that we set for Rover for early season in the velvet. He likes to live in this wooded draw right here, and he'll come out, come down this tractor trail, and go over to this pond to drink. And on a bean year, he'll head to feed in this field to the west. Hopefully this camera will be our first piece of intel to start putting the puzzle together in our pursuit for Rover this year.